The OP of this story has a son. This said son is about to have a baby, but he's telling OP, you have to adopt my baby because I don't want it. And if you don't, I'm going to be a deadbeat father. You guys will not believe what happens next. I'm not sure where to start with this. My wife and I have 5 sons ranging from ages 24 to 10. We were very young when we had our oldest, yes, and just recently found out my wife is pregnant again. When we announced this, my second oldest son, 20 male, who lives independently but nearby, had an extremely angry reaction, and when I spoke to him later, I found out he's gotten a girl pregnant and wanted me and my wife to adopt the baby. The baby's mother, his ex-girlfriend, is not on board with that idea, and he's been trying to persuade her. That was nearly 2 weeks ago now, and I'm at a loss for how to deal with this situation. I realize my son is scared of the situation he is in, and he does want some help. I've tried to reassure him that I'm with him, and to be the best to my ability, willing to help him with whatever he feels he can't handle. Money, babysitting, advice, anything. I thought that once he realized it would be okay, he would step up and accept responsibility to raise his own child. However, he's adamant that he doesn't want anything to do with this baby, and insists he will do nothing besides pay the bare minimum of child support if we don't adopt it. Not even taking account the difficulty it would be for me and my wife to have 2 babies in the household, as well as our other children. I'm uncomfortable with the idea of adopting the baby for several reasons. First of all, because the baby's mother doesn't want to give it up, not even to us. She had apparently been considering it when she thought she'd get no support from my son, and it was her only chance to be in the baby's life and still give the baby a decent life. However, after I spoke to her personally, my son had apparently been trying to tell his ex-girlfriend that my wife and I would definitely be willing to adopt the baby before he even said a word to us about the situation, and assured her I would be a support system for my grandchild no matter what. She seemed relieved to the point of tears, and immediately said she did not want to give up her child. At this point, even if she could be persuaded to do so without me threatening to withdraw support, which, of course, I would not do, it would always feel like we've taken her baby under duress. On top of that, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of letting my son get out of his responsibilities as a father by taking them over for him. I raised him better than that. I'm simply unsure of how to handle this situation, how to guide my son and help my grandchild in the best way for everyone. Part of my difficulty with it is that my own childhood situation is making me biased in several ways. I've been the unwanted child before. When I was little, my single mother raised me and my bio father dropped by for occasional visits. When my mom died, my dad got custody, but he did not want it, and essentially passed the chore of raising me onto as many other people as he could, interacting with me as little as possible. It was an incredibly lonely childhood, and the rejection still hurts. I don't want my granddaughter to go through that same painful process of realizing her father doesn't want her, which I know she will if my son does not change my mind about wanting a relationship with her, and it's just forced. However, even if a relationship isn't forced, she's going to wonder why her father isn't in her life, and learn that she's unwanted either way. I don't think it's possible for that to not be hurtful. I also can't relate because I've also been the young person who accidentally got a girl pregnant when I wasn't ready. Unlike my son, my wife and I were not in a stable position, financially or otherwise, when we had our oldest, but we were in love, and once I was able to wrap my head around the situation, I was happy about it. I suppose it's because I had such a sad childhood that I was happy to finally have my own family. However, my son has had a loving family his whole life, and right now what he wants is independence. I can sympathize with that, but it's still upsetting for me to think he would abandon his own child. It's hard for me to accept that he would do something so heartless. and I keep hoping that he will change his mind on his own volition. But I think I need to prepare for the worst case scenario that he doesn't. I'd appreciate any perspectives about how to handle the situation. Okay, so here's an update for this story that's 3 months after the original post. Here we go. It's been a long time since my first post. My 42-year-old son, 20 male, wants to adopt his baby and is threatening to be a deadbeat if I don't. Relationship advice. And I'm not sure if anyone remembers it, but got a lot of good advice on my post here about my son, insisting on being a deadbeat dad. So here's the update. When I first posted, my son was lashing out and scared and completely refusing to have a reasonable discussion about this matter. I got a lot of advice to cut him out of my life, but I really can never see a situation in which I would do that to my son. So I decided to tell him, briefly and firmly, that I was absolutely not going to adopt this child, and that it never would have been an adoption or option no matter what he thought, and that I can't make his choices for him, but I hope once he comes to terms with reality, he'll decide to do the right thing. I thought he was going to get angry and yell again, but to my relief, he was calm and said he knew. However, he looked really resigned and hopeless. It killed me to see him that way. I know it was the consequences of his own action, but I still love him and felt his pain. So I sat down beside him and promised him we'd figure this out, and tried once again to try to talk it out with him. I finally got him to open up a little bit. He expressed that basically he panicked and felt that he did not know how to be a father, but he knew how to be a brother. He felt trapped and like he did not understand why everyone was trying to force him to do something he did not want to do, and did not feel capable of doing it. I told him frankly about my own childhood experiences with my own father, who did not want me and didn't love me, and explained that everyone else was pushing him not because we want to hurt him, but because we're trying to protect the innocent baby. I explained that no one's perfect, but there's nothing more emotionally painful than being unwanted. And having a father who at least loved me and wanted me there would have made a world of difference no matter what other mistakes he made. He started crying like I haven't seen him do since he was a little boy, and said he never really wanted to completely abandon his child, and wouldn't have really done that. But he really thought the adoption was the best option. He was just saying what he thought he had to say to make that happen. This was a huge relief to me to see what he was really not no heartless person as he was pretending to be. He spoke up about some of his own childhood issues too. Basically, he had some struggles with our home situation, and having to compromise and take his brothers and our housemates into account with everything. And he's upset just when he is finally ready for freedom. He's being tied down again. I sympathize with his feelings, and I know I'm not a perfect parent. Neither's my wife. Our younger kids had a pretty stable life, but our older two are old enough to remember some of the instability my family experienced those years back. And I guess it affected him more than he let on. I recommend therapy again, and he's had a few sessions since. Basically, we all had to come to terms with the fact that this wasn't going to be a perfect situation, but all we could do is try to do right by the baby. I told my son he needs to apologize to his ex-girlfriend, because no matter what his intentions were, he was acting like a complete a-hole, and causing her much distress when he should have been supporting her. He apologized and she was remarkably graceful about it, and they eventually came up with a co-parenting agreement. Basically, for now, since the baby is so young and breastfeeding, her mother will have primary custody while my son pays child support and regularly comes to spend time with the baby and help out. He'll take her back to his place for visitation on a case-by-case basis, but when the baby's older, he'll have more custody. They'll decide the exact split later depending on circumstances. About my granddaughter's mother. Her parents were sadly incredibly unsupportive and were honestly going out of their way to make things as hard on her as possible. I understand that since she was still living under her parents' roof, They had some say about rules she had to follow. But in my opinion, their reaction to her pregnancy was to the point of being cruel. When I spoke to the family, the parents were calling their daughter a rude name for a woman, saying they were ashamed and going on and on about how lucky she was they did not kick her out on the streets. They actually got mad at me for offering support. It was horrible to watch, and I knew these were just the things that they were saying in front of other people. Who knew how they were speaking to her at home? So I reached out to the young lady privately and asked if she was okay in her situation. Long story short, she wasn't. She moved in with my family soon after, and she fits right in. My younger sons love her sense of humor and that she knows things about video games. And she and I have become close as well. Obviously, she has her hands full right now with her baby, but she has been great help around the house too. Right now, my wife and I are making sure she gets all the rest and recovery she needs. And my son has been coming over every day to help out as well. He has so far been a very dedicated father, and nothing but respectful to the mother of his child. It's been exactly the opposite of what I feared it would be, and I'm so proud of him. I think this relatively worked out pretty well, considering OP gave the ex-girlfriend a place to stay, so now she's around her children. I think that works out a lot better, and it makes it less of a vile, toxic situation. Our next story that we're going to look at: would I be the a-hole for planting prickly bushes in my front yard to keep the neighbor's kids from my property? Guys, this is a nightmare of a neighbor story, and I can't wait to read it. If you're new to the channel, smash that subscribe button as Mr. Reddito does daily videos. Here comes story number 2. I moved into a detached townhouse a few months ago. It's a rental. I'm leasing it for a year with the option to extend. That with the second year or possibly buy it. My driveway's right next to the neighbor's. It's big enough to fit 2 regular-sized cars, and halfway down my driveway there's a path. It leads right around my house. On one side of the path is my house, on the other side, about 3 meters of yard. That's mine. Ever since I moved in, I've been having issues with my neighbors using my driveway for parking. Turning their cars, storing their other stuff, playing, etc. Asking them to stop using it and keep their items on their own property has not worked. So I placed a few large plants and installed a camera and no trespassing sign. That's helped a bit, at least the cars are gone. The last few weeks with the stay home advice, I've been working from home. But the neighbors' kids are making that really hard. They're about 5 and 7, boys, and they keep ringing my doorbell multiple times a day to ask if they can play with my dog. If I want to play with them or anything else they can think of. I asked them to stop so I can work, which of course did not work. So I asked their parents and was told boys will be boys, and they weren't going to do anything about it. To keep my sanity intact, I removed the battery from the doorbell, but now they keep running around in front of the yard, on the path around the house, and banging on my windows, banging on my doors, actually trying to open the gate to my backyard this morning as they heard me in there. I once again asked them to stop, told them I will not be allowing them to play with the dog anymore at all if they keep this up, and they left, sending over their dad. I told him to keep the boys away from my property and door. If not, I'll be planting some prickly bushes to teach them to stay away from other people's stuff. And I shut the door in his face. Would I be the a-hole if I actually did that? I'd love to place a fence or something, but as it may be short-term rental, I have to be able to return everything to its original state. Okay guys, so there is an update on this story, and here it comes now. About a week after my post, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway. About 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall, I planted lots of stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway, you have to either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house that's 2 meters along the side of the house and my windows. and then walk into my actual garden. It's not something you could do by mistake. For about 2 weeks, it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single day. As far as I know, they did not enter the garden, and I haven't noticed them walking around my house anymore. So I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago, berry season started, and my bushes are now full of raspberries, and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbors noticed. First, I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home. I told their mom I caught them stealing. That's how I see it, even though it's fruit, and I would call the cops next time. She huffed and puffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside. After that, it was quiet up until yesterday afternoon, when I went out for a while and found the dad and his 2 sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants. I did not even confront them. I just called the cops from a distance as they had not noticed me yet, and I started filming them after making the call. Luckily, 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so, and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing, and that I could press charges. For the first time, I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor. He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house, I guess hoping his wife would somehow talk to the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while, the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. I got a smile and a yes about that. But the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little blank living next door. I told them no for now, asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road to cover the entire front garden. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around, but his wife isn't there yet. And if I ever catch any of them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will be filed. I'm honestly surprised it took this long to get the cops involved. The second those little kids would not stop ringing my doorbell, let me just say, I would not be attaching the battery. I need my doorbell. I would simply go over to their house and say, if you guys don't fix this problem, I'm calling the cops. That would be the best solution to the answer. But it took a little longer than expected to get the cops out there. Let me know what you guys thought of this story in the comment section down below. I love reading your opinions. Our next story on the day and the final story is an Am I the A-hole? Am I the a-hole for causing my mom and stepdad's divorce over a swimming accident? I know it sounds crazy, but let's get right into it. I'm a 14-year-old female. I have a stepsister who's 9 that likes to copy everything I do. We have a swimming pool, and in one of the swimming pools, I have a thing I like to do. It is a kicking off the wall and swimming to another wall, back and forth over and over again. My sister likes to copy that, but she sometimes gets too close, and I don't want to accidentally hurt her. Once I notice that she's getting too close and not fixing it, I'll ask her nicely to stop getting so close, and if she can't do that, then just to stop. She usually fixes it, but this time she did not. I just ignored it and kept swimming. Well, I asked her again to please stop getting so close, and when she did not listen, I accidentally kicked her in the side. Keep in mind, I am 14 years old and not exactly strong. I kicked her underwater, so if you've ever swam in a pool, you know you can't kick hard underwater. I also did it on accident. I was just swimming. Well, my stepdad was on the porch, and when my stepsister came up for air, she was fake crying and screaming that I just kicked her in the face really hard. When my stepdad heard her crying and screaming, he asked me what happened, and I explained the whole story about how I asked her to stop 2 times, and then I accidentally kicked her in the side. My sister then started saying that I was lying and, quote, I kicked her in the face hard on purpose. Let's just say my stepdad definitely worships his daughter and favors her over me. Now, do I blame him? No, because I'm not his bio daughter. But he makes it extremely obvious that he loves her way more than he does me. So, when he heard from his daughter that I kicked her hard in the face, on purpose, he proceeded to call me a bunch of names, along the lines of brat, terrible sister, even bitch, arrogant, and a bunch of other things. Well, when my mother heard all the screaming from my stepsister and her dad, she came out and asked what happened. I explained what actually happened and what my stepsister had said happened, and told my mom everything my stepdad called me. My mother kicked him out and told him and his daughter to pack their stuff and leave. After a while of arguing from my mom and stepdad, they eventually left with all their belongings. I asked my mom what she was going to do, and she said she wasn't sure, but no one's going to disrespect her daughter, ever, and think that they're going to get away with it. All of that was about 5 days ago, and my mom and stepdad have been fighting over the phone at least once a day about the whole ordeal. I asked her today what was happening, and she said she was divorcing him. I was shocked. I can't believe this all happened because of me. I could have just apologized for something I didn't do, but it would have been maybe stopped all this. So, am I the a-hole for causing my mom and stepdad to divorce over a swimming accident? I think the saddest part of this story is now OP is going to live with the fact that OP thinks it's her fault. It's not really her fault, and I want to read a comment that I found in the original thread. This isn't because of you. I think this has been a long time coming, and this was just the trigger event. You must feel terrible, but there's probably things behind the scenes that you just don't know. Not the a-hole. Guys, I have to say I agree with that, as just accidentally in a pool nudging someone with your foot, that's not going to cause a divorce. Obviously, there was underlying things that led to this. Let me know what you guys thought of the 3 stories today. Drop your thoughts below, subscribe to the channel, and like always, Mr. Reddito will see you tomorrow.